There's a fascinating story that is brought by the Rebbe in a Sicha from the Zohar, a story about Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, where he actually had a certain kind of a party, if you will, a Farbrengen, where he brought a whole bunch of very special rabbis together to learn secrets of Torah. And there's an unusual thing that happened, and the Rebbe actually explains in a very deep way. And what does it say? What's the story? The story is that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, in this gathering with other rabbis, he noticed one of the rabbis there was thinking about things of the world in their special Farbrengen, where they're talking about secrets of Torah and he's teaching secrets of Torah. Rabbi Yossi was thinking about things of the world. So Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai told them, Yossi, kum ashem dikunach. So Yossi, elevate yourself and complete your spiritual image, because a letter in your name is missing. Because he was thinking about things of the world in their learning session, he was lacking. There was a certain lacking that occurred in him. After that, Rabbi Yossi, it says, Kam Rabbi Yossi v'chad milan deraisa, Istakel v'Rav Shimon Amar lo, Rabbi Yossi hashta an shalom v'dukanach shalom. So Rabbi Yossi, it says that Rabbi Yossi basically elevated himself, and he was very happy with the Divrei Torah. He was learning it, and he was learning it in a very happy way. He got really into it. And then after he kind of was concentrating and kind of like part of the group in learning, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai told them that now you are complete, and your spiritual image is also complete. And then Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, he kind of started another level, even a deeper level of learning, and he had a whole Torah that he said about VaYakhel, it's like a whole different thing. So the Rebbe actually, he brings the story, and he asks a few questions about it. And the couple of questions that he starts off with are as follows. How could it be that Rabbi Yossi, that was one of the biggest Tanaim, who was a huge tzaddik, when he was in a Farbrengen with Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and his Chaveria, his group, when they talked about secrets of Torah, that at that time, particularly in this special time of learning, Dafka then he's thinking about things of the world. How could that be? Question number 2, that if the Milid de Alma, the things of the world that Rabbi Yossi is thinking about was in a way that is, kosher al pi Torah, that he was allowed to actually think and contemplate about these things when he was learning with Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. So then there's a different question. If he was thinking about things that are okay, obviously he's on his level, he was thinking about things that are permissible, even when they were learning with Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, whatever he was thinking about was okay. So if so, why would we say that? Why would Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, the Rashbi, say that there's a missing letter in his name because of these thoughts? That's the second question. So that's how we kind of begin explaining this story. So the Rebbe actually starts explaining this, basing his explanation on his father's works on the Zohar, Rav Leivik, and he basically said something like this. He said that even though Rav Yossi was from the Chavraya of Rav Shimon Bar Yochai, that he was part of his group, that his group, Rav Shimon Bar Yochai, and the few people that were there, were in this category of tzaddikim and tamidei chachamim, that Torasan umlasan, that their learning Torah was their craft, that was what they did exclusively. However, Rav Yossi, he was not, at least not all the time, on this level of scholarship. That he would only learn Torah and didn't work. He actually, the Gemara actually says, it says about him that Shalchahavi, he was a tanner. He would tan skins. That was his work. He was a working man, and he worked in addition to being a Torah scholar. Unlike Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and some of the friends who were there in that party, that Turasim Nasim, they were only learning all the time, and they never really worked. So Rabbi Yossi did work, and he had a part in this world, as a working individual. Also, another thing we find is Rabbi Yossi had another job, and that job was, he had a lot of communal responsibilities. He was involved with his community, and it says, in the Gemara, it explains in Masechta Sanhedrin how Rabbi Yossi actually had many different takanas and communal contributions to Tzipori. So he was very busy, also as a tanner, and also with communal matters, and also he was a Tana. He was an extremely learned individual. But Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, he was mostly, just learning all the time. So according to this, we can understand that the Mili D'Alma, the things of the world, Rabbi Yossi was thinking about and contemplating at that time were things of communal nature, helping people, how to help people. So therefore, he kind of stopped himself from the learning or the participating in the secrets of Torah. When they were learning the secrets of Torah of Shimon Bar Yochai in that Farbrengen, or in that learning session, or in that shir, because it says that the participation in Tzarchei Tzibur Doichet Talmud Torah, that participating in communal matters kind of takes precedence and priority over learning Torah. So in his mind, he was helping these individuals, and he was thinking how to help these individuals. So then he kind of it was permissible for him to kind of stop that learning with Rav Shimon Bar Yochai and his friends. So according to this, we could also explain deeper why was it that Rav Shimon Bar Yochai said that one of his letters of his name was missing. Because that he was involved in Tzarchei Tzibur, and that actually is Doichet Talmud Torah, by being involved in communal matters, that takes precedence over Talmud Torah. It has an advantage and a disadvantage. It's a double-edged sword. On one hand, it's for the greater good of the community. It's for the greater good of people, other people, many people. However, with the person who's involved with Tzarchei Tzibur, with somebody who is involved with communal matters for his own sake, it could be a big deficiency. It could be actually a dissent. And there's even, because instead of elevating himself, he's taking that time and he's giving it to other people. So he's missing out in a sense, because he is sacrificing his own growth to help other people grow. So there's a certain, he's elevating other people, but he's descent. It could be a descent for him. And there's a very famous saying that is brought in also Sanhedrin. The Chazal say, "Hatel alehem tzarchei tzibur v'en kalim alehem." That basically, if you put communal matters on certain individuals, that will kind of destroy them. It's such a hard thing, communal matters to do. It could kind of even destroy the individual or make them deficient in some way. And also regarding Mordechai, it said that even though he was Mishnah Lamelech, and he also kind of couldn't, give himself over to learning Torah, in the same way that all the other Sanhedrin were able to do, and that was something for the greater good. He was trying to help the Jewish people and to save them, something that is of communal nature, to help the Jewish community, and that obviously takes precedence over his own learning Torah and his own scholarship. Nevertheless, it did make a certain dissent and cause a certain dissent for him, to the extent that some of the other scholars in the Sanhedrin thought less of him for that, and therefore his own scholarship was missing, and his esteem in their eyes was also decreased. So he kind of self-sacrificed his own greatness or his own elevation to help other people, but it was for sure there was a dissent in him as well. So this explanation is taken from the explanation of Rav Leivik, the Rebbe's father's ha'aras on Sefer Zohar, regarding this story, that Rabbi Yossi, when he was contemplating the things of the world, he's not talking about things of like negative things or just worldly distractions or pleasures or any other plans, personal plans. No, he explains that he was contemplating this amal sicha, this idea of amal sicha, the toil of speech, which is a very big thing. And the Rebbe explains at length this idea of amal sicha, this toil of speech. And the Rebbe actually says that there's a whole explanation that I guess like he explained in another sicha, Chelek Tesvav, Likutei Sichos Chelek Tesvav, page 101, regarding this very famous saying from the sages also in Masechtas Sanhedrin, that what do they say? Adam le'amal yivaled, a person is born to toil. Ein yodea im le'amal Torah, im le'amal sicha. But I don't know, it says over there, if he's born for toiling in Torah, or if he's born to toil in speech. And he's going to explain what that means. Havi omer le'amal Torah nivra, and I say, or we could say, that he was born for toiling in Torah. But however, because the Gemara also brings up this, the Torah's emes, the Torah of truth actually brings up this idea that a person, maybe it could be that the person is born for amal sicha, toiling in speech. It's understood that it's a huge, lofty level. And in addition to that, that the person is born, the Amal Torah Nivra, he was born to toil in Torah, that doesn't negate completely the idea of Amal Sicha, of toiling in speech, which we're going to explain. However, the Amal Sicha, the toiling in speech, alone is not the ultimate reason for creation for the individual. And Adrabah, on the contrary, to get to this great ultimate level of Amal Torah, of toiling in Torah, there has to be a prerequisite, preparatory stage of Amal Sicha, of toiling in speech. And especially that by this, that a person is toiling in speech, a person affects Sicha L'mayla, speech of up above. That the Eibishter, Hashem, says the 10 ma'amaros, the 10 utterances, speech, that through them the world is created. As the Alter Rebbe explains in the Tanya, that the 10 ma'amaros, the 10 utterances of Hashem, are enclosed always in the world to bring it into being and to enliven it. And that is what it means, mili di olma. That's the explanation of the words of the world, the 10 utterances with which the world is created and that are enclosed in it. And they are called milim dihidyota, like simple words. Those are the simple words of Hashem, the creating utterances of the worlds. And the explanation of to explain this in a more personal matter, and to bring it to everyday terms for an individual, what does it all mean? What does it mean? So we could say the mehar b'milei d'alma, that when Rabbi Yossi was contemplating things of the world, which that is basically amal sicha, toiling of speech. What is toiling of the speech? It means the toiling in the speech, like the speech of Hashem is creating the world, milad d'alma, things of the world. So a person, when they're toiling with the world, what does that mean? Mihar b'milad d'alma, a person is contemplating the things of the world, amal sicha, toiling of speech. It's the avoda, it's the toil of birurin. Birurin is the rectification and the refinements of the world, to basically refine and purify all matters of the world, specifically through the huge avoda task of Kol Ma'asecha Yu L'Shem Shamayim, that all of your deeds, everything that a person does, should be for the sake of heaven. And V'chol Darkecha De'ehu, and all of your personal ways and everything that you do in your everyday, you should basically get to know Hashem and schlep Him into the picture. Which is basically talking about the refinement and the purification of permissible things of a person. You know, my permissible things, whatever it is that I do, everything that I do my everyday. Mili d'alma, things of the world. And this avodah actually has a huge effect that sustains creation, the Rebbe says, because this toiling and refinement of the world, amal sicha, toiling of speech corresponding to speech of creation of Hashem, kind of like inspires Hashem to create the world. But nevertheless, with all that, this, compared to the toiling in Torah, it pales in comparison. Especially the secrets of Torah, you know, the Chassidus and the Pnimis of Torah, because although the person toiling with the refinement of the world and elevating the world and their own personal world and everything that they do is for the sake of heaven, and the fact that you actually are kind of like are inspiring Hashem to create through your everyday holy, you know, integrating holiness into your everyday, and also, and furthermore, the Rebbe he takes this comparison of the toil in speech, which is the toil in speech, meaning the speech of toiling in the world, which is basically created by the speech of Hashem, versus toiling in Torah. He adds this commentary that the kavanah of the descent of the soul is not to rectify itself, but rather it's here to fix and rectify the body and the animal soul and his portion in the world. Wherever a person goes, you're supposed to elevate that place. And through this work, which is called avodas habirurim, the avodah of rectification of the world, the primary reason of creation of the individual is fulfilled. Because it says, that the Eibishter desired, reason for creation, it says that the Eibishter desired, Hashem desired to have a dwelling place in the lower realms, to be revealed in the lower realms which He created. But with all that and the greatness of that, toiling in the world, amal sicha, nevertheless the toiling in Torah is higher than that. Because when a person is toiling with the world, that's one level. However, when a person is toiling with Torah, and they bring Torah into the equation, they are drawing down a godly light that is much higher than the world. And that is why, getting back to that story of Rabbi Yossi and Shimon Bar Yochai, there was a lacking in the name of Rabbi Yossi when he was thinking of Mili d'alma, word, you know, things of the world, because that is lower, it's a lower level regarding his own toiling in Torah. So that's one explanation, but let's go even deeper. That this still not really, I mean, we could go even deeper into this, but still it's not really enough, because it said not that there was a lacking and that is it, but there was actually like a letter in his name that was missing. And we're gonna, so he's gonna actually make a really strong question right now, that the behavior of the Tanaim and the Amoraim, these really huge giants of scholarship, corresponded to their soul roots. So they behaved and they lived and they thought in correspondence and in parallel to what their root of the soul was. So too with Rabbi Yossi, who was contemplating things of the world, just like the Rebbe's father explains. Why? Because Rabbi Yossi, he was of the aspect of Malchus. And Malchus is the source of all the worlds, Bria Yitzira Asiya, that are created and brought into being from the 10 utterances of Sphira of Malchus. So therefore, Rabbi Yossi's work and toil was with Amal Sicha, the toiling in the world, toiling in speech, meaning the speech of Hashem, which creates the world, to make the world exist. So, having taken that into consideration, that the whole shlichus, the whole mission of Rav Yossi in this world, is expressed in the work of Amal Sicha, of sustaining the world through toiling in the world, which is sustained by the speech of Hashem, Amal Sicha, the toiling in speech. If so, even though that with the toiling in Torah there's even a greater virtue regarding this toiling in speech, toiling in the world, because the Torah is much higher than the world, nevertheless, how could we say that because Rabbi Yossi was contemplating things of the world, there could be a dissent and even like a lacking in his name, because the name of the individual is an expression for their soul. So at that time, so how could we say that there's a lacking in his name when he was doing what his soul mission was supposed to be doing? He was doing what he was supposed to do. That was his whole reason for creation. So why would his name be missing? And also, to give a little example for this, there's a very famous story that the Rebbe brings of Rav Zusha Anipoli, that he actually said, these very famous words, that after 120, they're not going to ask him, up above, why weren't you like this tzaddik, or why weren't you like that tzaddik? They're not going to ask that. They're going to ask, why weren't you Zusha? You should be like what you are, or the best that you can be. So they're not going to compare you to somebody else. So if so, Rav Yossi should be what he's supposed to be, and if he's supposed to be working in the world, and that's his whole contribution. So why would his name be missing for doing what he's supposed to be doing? And in addition, so if basically he had a certain level of work he's supposed to do, if he's not going to get the virtue of additional work, and because of that there's a certain lacking in his name, so then he's going to be sad, and maybe he's not going to be so inspired, and this is going to actually cause him a certain blockage in what he's supposed to do, and a certain kind of like a lacking in his basic work. So why would we hold it against him? Okay, there's a higher level of work, but that's not his level. So what he is supposed to be doing, if he's not doing it, it's going to be lacking. So why would we kind of like put him down in a sense, and basically discourage him when in his path that he's supposed to go on, even though there's something that he could even benefit more so with Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and his friends. Also, another thing we need to understand, why is it that Rabbi Yossi himself did didn't have that sensitivity that there was a certain lacking in his soul image and in his name, that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai had to tell him about that. And also when he did become complete again by immersing himself in Torah, in the Farbrengen, so then basically Rav Shimon had to tell him that he was complete. So to answer this, and delve deeper into the story, we say that Rav Yossi, if you just look at Rav Yossi himself, in the way that his work should be, because of his shorish neshama, his soul root, so his contemplation of the things of the world, milad alma, it was not a lacking in him. That was perfectly fine. And on the contrary, that was what he was supposed to be doing, and that was his soul image and his name. That was an expression of that. However, the lacking that did occur was when we take into equation not just Yossi, like how he is by himself, but rather Yossi, now that he's with this group of friends with Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. So now, in this setting that he was in, the Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and his friends were people that they were on a level of Terasu Nase, that their craft was their Torah. So now that he's with them, he should basically kind of like be on their level. So that level of Terasu Nase should have been at Rabbi Yossi also, at least at that time when he was there with them. So that's why Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who was the head of the group, he was the one who could actually detect this lacking by Rabbi Yossi, and also notice when it was rectified. So now we're going to go a little bit deeper. So this could also be understood with a very powerful statement from the Alter Rebbe in Hilchos Talmud Torah, and the laws of learning Torah, and this is what he says: Kol nefesh tzricha letikuna la'asok bepardes kfi ma sheyachol lahasig. Every soul must, for its own rectification, toil with and learn all aspects of Torah. Pardes is talking about every aspect of Torah, Pshat, the simple explanation, Remez, the allusions, Drush v'Sod, from the simplest to the most esoteric. Every neshama, every soul has to basically immerse itself and learn as much as it can comprehend of that. And the soul cannot, be complete, and it cannot be rectified without this knowledge of all of Torah. And an individual who maybe was lazy, and he didn't comprehend, and he doesn't know, only a little bit, so this individual has to come back again in another reincarnation. In another incarnation, and basically learn as much as he could learn from all of Torah. Yeah, all levels of Torah. He has to basically learn all levels of Torah, from the simplest to the most esoteric. And until basically the individual has kind of like learned as much as he can from all levels of Torah, he has to come back again and again and again in reincarnation. However, what if a person's learning is not because, like maybe a person is learning a little bit, a person could be learning a little bit because of either they're lazy, and that's why they're not learning, so they have to come back and reincarnate. However, what if a person is learning a little bit because of another reason, not because of laziness, but because Al Pi Torah, according to Torah, he is exempt from this learning of Torah. And this exemption of Torah, learning, the Alter Rebbe brings two options for this exemption, like two ways that it could take place. The first one, that a person is learning a little bit of Torah, that could either be a lesson in itself, that his neshama, the neshama of this individual, it's not really shaykh, it's not really, it doesn't really require more of learning Torah. Like if they know a certain amount, and that's what they can understand, that's what they can comprehend, so that's enough for that neshama. So therefore that neshama, or that soul, reaches its perfection, its completion, even with a little bit of learning Torah. they have to basically learn Perek Echad Shachis, Perek Echad Arvis. So even this neshama that might be exempt from Torah because it doesn't need more, they also have an obligation of learning, one chapter in the morning, one chapter at nighttime. And there's a very interesting Hasidic pshatel about this. Perek Echad Shachis, Perek Echad Arvis, that, like it says, like regarding a Baal Bais, like somebody who's not a Torah scholar, just a simple individual. So what's their Torah requirement? Is Perek Echad Shachis, Perek Echad Arvis, the very minimum. What's the minimum? Perek Echad Shachis is that they should learn Torah until they're completely mefarik themselves. They completely are broken apart, or they break themselves to such an extent until they see Shachris, until they see the light. Or Perek Echad Arvis, and they're mefarik themselves, they break themselves so much until they see Arvis, like the sweetness of Torah. So that's a whole different level, that is brought down by Chassidim. So that's one level. So Aleph is the neshama is not shaykh for more, and therefore, this is enough for the neshama, and just do the bare minimum. That could be one thing. The second thing is because he is. The second thing is because the person is toiling in Torah whatever he can, and then the Eibishter is mashlim for him all the rest. And the Eibishter is completing whatever the individual is supposed to reach, but did not succeed in reaching for whatever reason. And then the Rabbi actually continues and says that b'derech efshel, possibly, that in general these two things. So these two things basically depend on why the person cannot learn Torah. Is it because he is busy, with permissible things, Torah, regarding parnasa, regarding making a living for his family, or for his own private matters? So that basically it's an indication that his neshama is not really shaykh to Marei Torah, to the masters of Torah. He's not a master of Torah. That's not his sole mission to be a master of Torah, but rather Marei Avdim Tavin, like a person who's supposed to do like good things in the world, mitzvahs. So he's not really so connected to understanding so much in Torah. So therefore, for this individual, it's enough just to learn in the morning a little bit, and at nighttime a little bit. However, if the individual is busy, in a permissible way, Torah, with other things like tzedakah and communal matters, so that actually exempts him from learning Torah because he's helping other people and he's benefiting other people. So therefore, his completeness is attained in a way that the Eibishter, even though he can't basically learn because he's busy with communal matters as much as he would like to, so Hashem would mashlim it. Hashem will fulfill whatever was missing by this individual, also in a way that is brought down that Hashem blesses him with amazing hatzlacha in his learning Torah, that even in a little bit of time he could comprehend and understand Torah that in a regular manner he would need a lot longer time. So that could be another way. As it says also in the Yerushalmi, in the Gemara Yerushalmi, regarding the Chassidim Rishonim, that they basically would daven for 9 hours a day. But these people were given, special Chassidim were given a huge, immense bracha in their Torah learning, to such an extent that they were able to understand immediately. They didn't have to spend the time analyzing it and really delving into it to understand, but their learning was blessed. They were able to attain comprehension immediately. Also, as it says regarding tzedakah, that the Alter Rebbe brings, and the Rebbe quoted many, many times, that he brings here in the Sicha as well, but doing tzedakah, whatever, physical tzedakah, also spiritual tzedakah, Nasa moicho v'libo zakim 1,000 parim kacha, that his mind, that his heart become purified 1,000 times more. The Rebbe actually mentioned that regarding Mitzvahim as well. The Rebbe kind of like benches you, 1,000 times more than what you'd normally be. And he says that it's not like an exaggeration, it's really like that. So now to conclude this whole story of the Zohar, of the Rashbi and Rabbi Yossi, the Rebbe concludes it as follows. The fact that the Rashbi noticed by Rabbi Yossi that there was a letter that was missing in his name, especially as the Rebbe's father explains, that was the letter Yud in Yossi, that corresponds to Yud of Shem Havaya, of Yud Ke Vav Ke, that actually illuminates the world of Atzilus. So that, in our personal sphere, in our personal everyday life, that's the that Yud that was missing was the toiling in Torah. Especially the Pnimis Torah, the secrets of Torah, the inner aspects of Torah, in our generations, Chassidus, which is much higher, Amal Torah is much higher than Amal Sicha, of working with the world, which corresponds to Asar Ma'amaros, the 10 utterances, which is the source of the worlds, Bria, Yetzirah, Asiyah, and Amal Torah, the toiling in Torah, that's the whole idea, the whole emphasis of Shimon Bar Yochai, was on the level of Torah Su'im Nasser, that Torah was his craft. So that itself is Ma'ir Razin Torah, the masters of Torah. So that was the proof, and that was a lesson that now it's demanded from Rabbi Yossi that he will elevate himself from his regular, soul root work, Milad Alma, of working with the world, and he will deal with now Amal Torah. He will deal now with rectifying, toiling with Torah, in the level and in the lofty level of the group of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who were people that, to describe them, were Torah Su'im Nasser. Their craft was their Torah. Their Torah was their craft. And maybe we could say even more than that, the Rebbe says, possibly maybe he says, but Derech Afshar, because that was a special Eis Ratzon, was an auspicious time regarding learning Torah, that his learning Torah at that time will be Kampa'im Kacha. So because he's learning that at that time, his Torah learning could be accelerated maybe many, many times more. So he could achieve a lot more by learning at that time and be completely immersed in that learning. So he could actually rectify whatever he needs to do by his learning Torah and his comprehension of Torah, that he would accomplish whatever he would even contemplate in things of the world to his learning of the Torah. And so too it was like that afterwards, because it's basically, it says, Kam Rabbi Yossi v'chadim milim deraisa, that Rabbi Yossi elevated himself in the words of Torah. So it was just like Rav Shimon Bar Yochai told them, An Shalom v'dukanach Shalom, you are complete and your soul image is complete. That we could explain that. What does it mean complete? The Rebbe kind of he explains that shleimus b'tachlis, complete, a whole completeness, like a perfect seamless completeness of Rav Yossi he was able to achieve in a way that also was retroactive. It affected all of his life, all of his lives before. This is something that was done through complete immersion in Torah. This is the story of Rav Shimon Bar Yochai and Rav Yossi, explained by the Rebbe in this Parshas VaYakhel, and I hope you enjoyed it.